is NBC Palm Springs.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Daytona Everett. Coronavirus continues to dominate headlines today. Talk about testing and turnaround time from the nation's top health officials. This as the CARES Act and all the federal help for unemployment is set to expire. We'll have the latest on a possible replacement bill that the Democrats and Republicans have been arguing about for weeks. But we'll start here in Riverside County, where a new mask campaign has been launched. The county is on a mission to deliver 10 million masks in 30 days. Officials kicked off the Masks Are Medicine campaign this week, and so far it's covered a lot of ground. Our Nico Payne shows us how it works.
10 million masks may sound like a lot, but when facing a pandemic, unlike anything we have gone up against before, county leaders say they expect these masks to go quickly. Riverside County has introduced the Masks Are Medicine campaign to try and slow the transmission of COVID-19. The county plans to donate 10 million masks countywide over the next 30 days.
And hoping that by doing this over the next 30 days, we can flatten the numbers and even in some cases lower the numbers on the trends that we're seeing right now.
As Riverside County remains on the state's coronavirus watch list, county leadership hopes this initiative will help with their COVID-19 response.
The pledge says that the person who takes the mask pledges to wear it as part of their program to try and fight COVID and encourage other people to do it as well.
10 million masks may seem like a lot, but county officials expect to disperse the masks relatively quickly.
We test between 3,000 and 4,000 people a day at our test sites in the county. We'll be delivering or giving out masks to everybody who gets tested.
They will also be distributed through community partners like Fine Food Bank, who help at-risk populations.
Because we already have a very wide distribution of food networks into, the most heavily and severely impacted communities and food deserts out in Riverside, eastern Riverside area, we have the ability to also send out with food these masks.
Funding for this project comes from the federal CARES Act, and the county says they hope this campaign will prevent any more mandatory orders in the future.
For $2 million, we got the 10 million masks. We're hoping, like I said, that the 10 million mask giveaway is at least a jumping point to maybe slowing that spread and slowing the numbers down, so that mandatory mask for the county won't be needed.
County officials also distributed over 50,000 masks to local nonprofit organizations who will be helping to hand out these masks for those who cannot make it into a testing site. Reporting in studio, I'm Nico Payne.
All right, thank you, Nico. Let's take a look at the latest COVID-19 numbers from Riverside County and the entire Coachella Valley. The county has stopped updating numbers on weekends, so these are as of Friday. Over 33,000 cases in Riverside County, over 9,000 of those in the Coachella Valley, 637 deaths in the county, 196 from the valley. Riverside County Supervisor Karen Spiegel tests positive for coronavirus. In a newsletter, Spiegel said she got sick even though she limited her time outside her home and restricted her exposure to the outside world. In April, Spiegel was one of 2 supervisors on the board who proposed ending county requirements on social distancing and the use of face coverings. Now she's saying no one is immune to the virus and people need to take proper precautions. The official overseeing coronavirus testing says turnaround times for results are still too long. Admiral Brett Giroir is the Assistant Secretary for Health at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. He says test result turnarounds are still slower than what he would like to see.
I started out by saying that we are never going to be happy with testing until we get turnaround times within 24 hours, and I would be happy with point-of-care testing everywhere. We are not there yet. We are doing everything we can to do that. What can we do? We can test everybody in a hospital within 24 hours so they can get the new treatments that we developed.
Multiple states dealing with high caseloads and some labs and public health departments report that turnaround times for diagnostic testing have slowed. The director of the National Institutes of Health says slow turnaround times is undercutting the value of the testing. More than 500 top health experts are calling for another national closure in a letter sent to the Trump administration. In the letter, they say we need bold action now to save lives. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going through the same cycle over and over again. Dr. Fauci spoke in response to this about the possibility of shutting down the country again.
You don't necessarily have to go all the way back to a complete shutdown, but you certainly have to call a pause and maybe even a backing up a bit.
These comments as coronavirus numbers continue to surge in the U.S., with the nation's daily death toll topping 1,000 for 4 days straight. As government benefits to protect Americans impacted by the pandemic start to run out, Democrats say they're waiting for a new GOP plan for Congress to pass. NBC's Jennifer Johnson has details.
In Washington, Democrats say they've had a bill on hold since mid-May to help struggling Americans, but are awaiting a counter-proposal from the White House and Republicans.
We have been ready for 2 months and 10 days. I've been here all weekend hoping they had something to give us. They promised it this week. It didn't come.
A federal ban on evictions has just run out. Federal pandemic unemployment compensation benefits expire Friday, and the payroll protection program for businesses ends early next month. The Trump administration defends the delay.
We want to make sure with the expiring unemployment insurance, we have the technical fix so people don't get paid more to stay home than they do to work. And we can move very quickly with the Democrats on these issues.
White House officials say the GOP's plan will be unveiled Monday and are hopeful Congress will move fast in passing this latest economic relief bill. Jennifer Johnson, NBC News, Washington.
And as discussions over small business relief continue, several local companies say it's too late. Muscle Works in Palm Desert officially shut its doors this past week. The owners of the gym say even with eviction moratoriums in place, they're unable to pay rent on the back end. The Greater Coachella Valley Chamber of Commerce says these closures affect more than a single company.
We know that money that is spent locally on small businesses, that money tends to stay within the valley. It gets recirculated. As opposed to money that may go into national chains or big box, that money tends to leave the valley and we don't necessarily see it again.
Well, the chamber is offering information on their website for struggling small businesses. The president says they're continuously applying for more financial aid, too.
Coronavirus coverage brought to you by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of eastern Coachella Valley.
All right, evacuations are being ordered as a brush fire burns in Huntington Beach. You can see it right there, all the smoke going up. The fire was initially reported as being 4 acres, but it's quickly growing. Fire crews are trying to prevent the spread and save homes that are nearby. There hasn't been any reports of damage to homes or injuries thus far. A Palm Springs brush fire that started early yesterday morning is now 211 acres and 50% contained. That was as of this morning. Fire crews will remain on scene to mop up hot spots until 100% containment is reached, which is expected by the end of the day. One firefighter suffered a minor leg injury yesterday. No word yet on what exactly caused that fire. And fire crews are battling a brush fire in Europa Valley. The so-called Karen fire broke out yesterday, and as of this morning, it was 250 acres and 50% contained. No injuries have been reported and no word if any structures have been damaged in that place. All right, we're taking a live look now from our Agua Caliente Casino cam. Actually looking like pretty clear skies out there. We're going to send it over to Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett for a look at your forecast.
Well, all good things must come to an end, and that cooling trend that we saw last week looks like it's going to be something that will move into our rearview mirror. High pressure building across the region this coming week will bring the H word back. In fact, we're going to be seeing temperatures that will bounce up into the 1 once again. I'll give you some details on that coming up as well. Long-term forecast models are suggesting that we could see an increase in humidity as monsoonal flow may come a little bit closer to us, but as it stands right now, we're not tracking any shower activity, just elevated moisture. I'll give you some details on that coming up as well. Next 3 days brought to you by Comfort Air show us getting into that 111 range on Monday, bouncing up into the 1 on Tuesday, making a slight pullback on Wednesday, but it looks like it gets hot again beyond that. I'll give you details and your full forecast coming up.
All right, thank you, Mike. The school year is quickly approaching and the CDC is updating its guidelines, encouraging districts to come back in person. Kristen Dahlgren reports.
With just weeks to go until school begins, the CDC is laying out its guidelines, pressing districts to welcome students back in person, encouraging cloth face coverings, hand hygiene, and disinfecting often, spacing out students to maintain social distancing, even repurposing unused buildings or holding classes outside, keeping groups of students in cohorts or pods together throughout the day. The new guidelines address downsides of remote learning and benefits of in-person classes, adding COVID poses a relatively low risk to kids, but also noting 64 children in the U.S. have died since the pandemic began.
Teenagers and children aged sort of 10 to 19 seem to transmit the virus at least the same rate as adults. So there's nothing to suggest that children don't. Perhaps there's some evidence to suggest that the youngest children are less likely to transmit it.
The new guidelines come just weeks after President Trump urged the CDC to ease its preliminary recommendations, which he called too restrictive.
I'm so angry. If it's not safe enough for GOP delegates to be hundreds in the convention space, then how is it safe enough in Florida for children to be hundreds in a school?
This week, the president acknowledged some areas considered hotspots might have to delay reopening, while asking Congress to pass a relief bill with more than $100 billion for schools that do reopen.
If the school is closed, the money should follow the student.
While the decision to reopen is up to states and school districts, the decision on whether students go back will ultimately be up to parents. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, New York.
Well, all local school districts will begin the school year virtually. Desert Sands, Palm Springs, and Coachella Valley Unified all adopted an online start to classes. They will eventually transition into a hybrid model when it's safe. Los Angeles and San Diego public schools will also start online. Officials say that both districts will continue planning for a return to in-person learning as soon as public health conditions allow. They went on to say that teachers, parents, and students will all receive training to make online learning more effective. NBC's Lester Holt spoke with the superintendent of the Los Angeles Unified School District about the decision to keep classrooms closed and how they plan on keeping students on track.
Was this a tough call, or at the end of the day, did you look at the numbers and say, we can't do it?
It's an incredibly tough call because we understand students need to be in school, but we can't compromise on the health and safety of all in the school community.
The CDC has come out with new guidance regarding schools and COVID. They lean heavily into the notion that kids need to be back in the classroom, that there are dangers to them if they don't get back in the classroom. Has any of what you've read caused you to rethink your position to do school online?
No, we all agree back in school as soon as possible. And if you look at what the CDC guidance says, the community has to be safe. You got to be within the boundaries of the World Health Organization guidelines to think about going back to school.
What's your level of concern that the kids right now who have been told they're going to be home indefinitely, that they won't be able to catch up?
We have great concern, which is why this fall, in addition to online learning, we're going to offer individual tutoring, both online and in person. We're going to do everything we can to try to help students catch up.
When the kids do come back, there's going to be a certain fear level, not only for the kids, but the faculty.
One thing that hasn't gotten enough attention is the mental health crisis that's coming with the education crisis. Students will bring the trauma back to school. Someone in the family might have become sick or, God forbid, passed away. Someone might have lost their job. The mental health aspect of being back in school will be as great a challenge as the learning challenge being back in school.
That was Lester Holt reporting. Coming up after the break, Chicago's mayor shares strong thoughts about the possibility of federal troops being sent to her city, even going so far as to draw a line in the sand against the Trump administration. Plus, a former Palm Desert High School standout pitcher has been called up to the bigs. We'll tell you who it was later in sports.
Baseball games live. Of them did reach an agreement with the city of Chicago, as long as they socially distance, follow all the rules, that they are allowed to have a quarter of their normal capacity on the rooftops. So this may be one of the few cities in America where real fans are going to see baseball games live.
Civil rights leader and U.S. Congressman John Lewis crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama one final time today. A horse-drawn hearse retraced the route of the 1965 march throughout the city, ending at the bridge where Lewis and other civil rights activists were beaten by state troopers on what's known as Bloody Sunday. Lewis's body will lie in state at the U.S. Capitol tomorrow. A private funeral will take place on Thursday in Georgia at Atlanta's historic Ebenezer Baptist Church. And protests continue in Portland. They've been going on for over 2 months now. In that video, you can hear demonstrators chanting, "Feds go home." That's in response to federal officers being sent to the city by the Trump administration to protect federal property. The federal courthouse has incurred over $50,000 worth of damage from those protests. And Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot talks about the possibility of federal officers coming into her city. This past week, President Trump announced Operation Legend, which sends federal police to cities in America with violent crime problems. They've been deployed to Portland, like you just saw. Lightfoot said that she doesn't want that same thing to happen in her city.
I've drawn a very hard line. We will not allow federal troops in our city. We will not tolerate unnamed agents taking people off the street, violating their rights, and holding them in custody. That's not happening here in Chicago. So I've drawn a very, very bright line. I've made that very clear to every federal authority that I've spoken with, and they understand that if they cross that line, we will not hesitate to use every tool at our disposal to stop troops and unwanted agents in our city.
The idea of sending federal troops to Chicago specifically comes after increased violent crime the past couple of weeks. A group of demonstrators took to Los Angeles city streets yesterday and even the freeway, stopping traffic. Organizers say the protest was in support of the ongoing movement that we saw in Portland, where federal troops are clashing with protesters, and similar rallies have popped up in cities across the United States. All right, we're taking a live look now from our Agua Caliente Casino cam. Mike's got a look at your forecast when we come back. All right, we're taking a live look now from our Walter Clark Highway 111 cam. A couple cars going through there for this beautiful Sunday afternoon. We're going to send it over to Mike Everett for a look at your forecast. Hey, Mike.
As I mentioned earlier, it was great while it lasted. We had that onshore flow that really kept temperatures regulated last week. But as we go into this new week, we are tracking a reversal. It looks like some high pressure will build across the region and take that flow back offshore again. It does a couple things for us. It's going to heat us up. We saw some of those numbers earlier. I'll show you the rest of the story coming up. It could also bring some more of that monsoonal flow a little bit closer to us. Doesn't look like it's going to materialize as any rain or storms as it stands right now, but it will elevate our humidity slightly. Of course, it's the time of year when we expect that, and we really have been blessed by not seeing a whole lot of that so far. We'll see where it takes us this week. Temperatures across North America will start the work week like this: 83 in Toronto, 96 in New York. You see some upper 80s and some very muggy, if not rainy conditions down towards Miami. Heating up in Phoenix, 108 is what we'll see, and up and down the West Coast is going to be warm as well. Portland's going to take a run at 100. When you've got some mid to upper 80s in Vancouver and Seattle, you know that we've got high pressure across the region. Here's what we're looking at tomorrow. We will do our very best to start in the upper 70s, and then we will warm well past that 30-year average. Remember, 108 is the norm for this time of year. Look for us to hit 111 in the afternoon, and you'll see those dew points getting into the lower 50s. 111 is where we'll top out in Palm Springs, 113 in parts south, 102 in Joshua Tree, and look for some mid to upper 70s in Big Bear, 99 in Cabazon. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast shows heating headed our way this week. In fact, we'll get into that 1-teen range starting on Tuesday. Looks like we're going to stay there all week.
All right, thank you, Mike. In tonight's Showbiz Report, Hollywood legend Olivia de Havilland has died at age 104. The last surviving star of Gone with the Wind died peacefully at her home in Paris from natural causes. She was a two-time Oscar winner for Best Actress with 49 films over 6 decades. Olivia's career also included presidential honors. We'll be right back. All right, thanks for joining us tonight. If you missed any of today's stories, you can see them on our website, NBCPalmSprings.com. You can see a QR code on the screen. You can scan that code and it's going to take you to our website. Also, we're streaming on Facebook now, so if you ever want to tune in on Facebook, just go to NBC Palm Springs and you can go there live. Pretty awesome. All right, have a great night. We'll see you later.